I've had a question asked a couple of videos ago by a fellow called Lost in Rural England, which seems to describe me pretty well, asking, surely, if the system collapses, won't the WEF or the New World Order or the Bilderberg Group or whoever you want to talk about, won't they simply take advantage of it in order to get us into more of a headlock? And won't they manage the collapse in order to increase control over us even further and turn us more into drones? He asked it very nicely, and he asked me to address this question. I've had it in comments under quite a few other videos, so I thought it might be fun to address it here. And I want to do it in two videos. The first one giving an illustration through what I think is probably the most revolting political speech that I think I've ever seen, quite recently by a fellow in Skegness called Matt Warman, the local MP, and then in the next video just looking at some of the ideas around it and how self-styled intellectuals are tying themselves in knots over this. When I think it's really quite simple. I mean, my answer is, yeah, of course, I think there are loads of conspiracies around, loads of them out there. I think people are perfectly entitled to talk about conspiracies, so long as you remember that people don't like to think. In general, the reason why the conspiracy idea can be so easily ridiculed is that a conspiracy requires people to think, to reflect, to use strategy, and that is something that people generally hate and refuse to do. So if you can think of a conspiracy in the traditional stereotypical model, but without the thought going into it, then yes, I think there are plenty of conspiracies. And what it comes down to is people pursuing their own interests, people doing what serves them and grouping together or flocking together like birds of a feather in order to do that. Where I think Mr. Lost in Rural England is wrong is that for that to work, for that kind of conspiracy to work, it requires a supine, compliant population. And it won't work. If the system breaks down, it is not going to work. So yes, there are conspiracies. If they were outright James Bond type conspiracies, I'd actually have a little bit a sneaking respect for them, because I would at least respect the method of thought, of thinking that goes ahead. If it was intelligent men going into some basement, sitting around a table, and some cold, dark, concrete basement, puritanically thinking it through and just applying their minds, I would at least have respect for the self-control, self-discipline, and perhaps the focus on something other than themselves that was being exercised. But that isn't what's happening. So if you take that virtue out of it, then I think you have a conspiracy. But where I disagree, the reason I think that won't work if and when the economy breaks down is because all the goodies, the things that are used to bribe us, to keep us compliant, those things won't be there anymore. At the moment, what the political class, I've heard them referred to as the ruling class or the agendaed class, I call them the political class, basically the politicians and the people in power and all of the apparatchiks around them, which is a lot of people, that they realise that they can do it at the moment. All they have to do is dangle an NHS appointment slip in front of our noses, and they can lead us into the cattle crush very meekly and make us stand there whilst we are turned into steers. But if the economy and the welfare state break down, if the money stops coming out of the wall, if this sense that the economy is being well managed on our behalf so that we can have a job, if that disappears, then I think those people in authority, they will have as much influence over us as the wounded seal has over the killer whale. But for the moment, the economy and the welfare state and the state, they have not broken down, and those in authority are finding us extremely compliant, as we are. They have every reason to think so. They are right to think so. And as an example, for a case study of this, I want to show a video of the MP Matt Warman talking to the residents of Skegness and as to why there is very little that can be done about all the migrants getting housed in hotels in Skegness, which they're very worried about. And he seems to be saying you're just going to have to live with. But I'll play, or it's part of it. It's part of a speech, but I'll bring it up in a second. Now, what I know about Matt Warman is just what's on his Wikipedia page. It isn't much, okay, but what you can see is he went to school. He went to a very expensive, very competitive private school in London, and then he worked for the Telegraph from I think 1999 to 2015. Not much connection with Skegness before then. There's a page where I think that's his about Matt Warman MP, and I like this bit that it says at the end. His mother-in-law worked for the RSPB, blah-de-blah-de. His father-in-law was a long-serving science teacher at Boston Grammar School. Matt and his wife Rachel have known and loved Lincolnshire for more than a decade and lived between Boston and Skegness with their young daughter, etc., etc. I just want to, given his background, I just wonder if, how unironically, the phrase "the good people of Skegness" is uttered in their family home. So when he's propped up or on his pillow talking about the tough day he's had dealing with constituents, how sincerely does he use the phrase "the good people of Skegness"? I won't say I'd like to be a fly on the wall of his bedroom, because I wouldn't like to be a fly on the wall of his bedroom. I only know I am disgusted by this speech that he's given, so I'll show that to you now. Now this is the main one. It's a 2.5 hour long public meeting, and the audio is very poor. I haven't struggled through it. I've only listened to parts of it and clicked through other parts of it. This is the extract. It's about 9 minutes long, and that's the bit that I want to focus on mainly. But I think I'd like to begin firstly with a little bit from the beginning of the first one, because the audio is good at the beginning. Right.
The people saying, and I quote, the people saying send them back, legally we can't. And you might that is simply a fact. I will get to questions, but let me finish the introduction, and I will get to questions. So, as I said, I get through the introduction. So, as I say, legally, we can't send people away. So what we have to do, what we have a legal duty under international law to do, just as Germany does, just as France does, just as always done. If a person claims asylum in this country, we have that duty to them. Now,
so he starts right off the bat by saying, it's the law, it's a done deal, there's nothing we can do about it. And his constituents are quite reasonably saying, well, you are an MP, you are a lawmaker, you should be doing something about that. But he's not saying that. He's always saying it's the foot of God coming down on us, coming down on Germany, France and everyone. Nothing I can do about it, and I won't. You're stuck with it. Incidentally, this is why the political class and the apparatchiks just love international agreements like the EU, like the International Convention on Human Rights, or the European Convention on Human Rights. Any way to farm out their legislative duty, the democratic nexus with the population. Any way that they can do that, they will do that. They just because what it then means is that instead of pushing legislation through Parliament and having to deal with objections from members of the public, they can simply turn up to the international prostitution expos like Davos and get together, have a really fancy meal, get drunk, and a few prostitutes and a bun fight, and then decide to whatever the legislation they're going to ram through behind our backs. how they can dominate us via the back door, a bit like their sex workers, their overpaid sex workers do to them. That is why they love. Though I'm certainly not saying this about Matt Warman, but I'm saying that is why the political class in general love international agreements, love international organisations. It makes you easier to rule, and then they can come back and say exactly what this man has said. It's out of my hands, it's out of everyone's hands, it comes down from above, and it's a done deal. So now I'll go back to the short extract of his speech, and I'll show you what he's saying here.
6 hotels across the constituency, 5 of them in Skegness. That houses currently 215 people. Now they are from Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Eritrea, Ethiopia. They are from some of the most war-torn and troubled countries. As I've said, I am trying to present you with facts on both sides of the side. So that's where they're from. We do have a legal duty, as I said, to try and do what we can for them.
So he's trying to say these are poor people coming from terrible countries that anyone would flee from. We have to try and help them. He gave this talk this video was uploaded in November of 2022. So he must have known that the rubber dinghy invasion, that is primarily Albanians. And he will also know that the overwhelming majority, they're coming via France. And then when they get into France, they're probably coming via Germany or via Belgium. They probably come through several countries where there is no conflict and there is no repression. There is nothing but generosity and bending over backwards for these invaders. The audience clearly disagrees, so he gives them that shut up gesture. You lot just shut up and be quiet, and tells them that these are facts. These are facts. No, they're not facts.
So that's where they're from. We do have a legal duty, as I said, to try and do what we can for them. What we also have is a duty to try and get on with processing them as quickly as possible. That is not, in my view, happening as quickly as it should be, and we need to try and move that process on as quickly as possible so that people who do, in many cases, bring with them health needs that puts additional pressure on our already struggling local health service. And also that puts pressure on our local economy.
Okay, so the problem is the failure to process them fast enough. Processing them means granting them citizenship, granting them the right to remain. Very, very few. I mean, the numbers you get returned either voluntarily or compulsorily or non-voluntarily are absolutely tiny, trivial. I think it's something like 2%, but it's a very, I'd need to look up the figures again, but a really tiny number. And he's in a position to know that. He is paid to know that. I think we can assume that he does know that. So he seems to be saying, we want them in the country, we just want to get them out in there as citizens nice and early. And you can hear the audience don't agree. The audience, they have some patriotism. They care about their country. They care about their sense of belonging and being a part of something. And that is he just talks over them. And he then moves on to talk about the economy. I love it when politicians talk about migration and the economy.
And also that puts pressure on our local economy, where we know that tourism is the most important industry in this town. And it does not get helped by people seeing the kind of headlines that they have seen from this. That the Home Office is absolutely alive to that problem.
So what he appears to be saying there is it is not the large numbers of fighting age males from countries with very violent sexual standards. That's not what not what is scaring people away from having their annual holiday in Skegness. It's the fact that it's the headlines, people complaining about it, people not... and I think the implication of that is by complaining about it, you're creating the headlines, you're making it worse, so stop complaining about it. That seems to me to be the implication. He doesn't spell it out like that, but I think that's what he's implying.
But the reality is they don't at the moment have alternative accommodation. Now, what have I asked them to look at? I've asked them to look at using former military bases, for instance, as a better way of housing people. I've asked them to get on with processing those accommodation, those asylum claims so that people can be moved on.
Okay, so he just wants them placed, he wants them processed faster, and he wants them placed somewhere else. Former military bases, perhaps Linton-on-Ouse. Linton-on-Ouse will want them in Skegness.
Is there extra help for the health service? Yes. Should it be more? Yes. Another question that often gets asked is, do the police have the resources they need to cope with them? Now, we obviously we may come to Superintendent Coates from further questions. Now, we see, we have seen that the police obviously cope with tens of thousands of people visiting over the summer. Of course, that is a different thing from the needs that might get posed by asylum seekers. What we have seen, of course, is the police attending some times at the hotels to try and make sure that all is as it should be. What Superintendent Coates would also tell me, what Superintendent Coates would also tell us is that there has not been a recorded rise in crime directly associated let me finish. Either with the 3 hotels that have been operating for some time, or with the 2 additional ones that have been stood up recently. Now,
so pressure on the health service, not a problem. He'd like to get a bit more money in. Where's that going to come from? And then the pressure of crime, no, not happening. And not listening to local people clearly have a different story there. He doesn't want to. He's not listening to it there. He's not taking it off them.
But I think, but I would hope you appreciate me being honest with you, that I don't have the answer that you might want to hear.
That's telling. So he hopes that they will appreciate the fact that he's being honest. He is paid. You and I, we are paying him, and they are voting for him to come and speak the truth. And he's asking for credit for not lying. I find that telling. If someone says that to you, mistrust their word. Now, he now goes on to address the question as to why it's all males. I would say why it's all young fighting age males, but he just uses the word male.
Before I come to the audience, lots of you have also asked, why is it an entirely male population that comes to this? Now the short answer is that it is very, very largely men that make the journey in the small boats across the channel, and that is because for whatever reason it is men who are more able to make that journey. If you look at the
Okay, this is nonsense. What he's saying is that it's only men. Although men, women and children are suffering terrible conflict and repression from the countries that he mentioned, cherry-picking conflict-ridden countries, that although that's the case, the women are happier to stay in the war zones than the men, and the men are able to make the journey more easily. I think that's what he's saying, that somehow for a woman it's safer to stay in a war zone or in a refugee camp than it is to make the journey here, to cross the channel in a rubber dinghy.
And the separate, I'm not going to judge people for fleeing those countries, but
he's not going to judge people for fleeing those countries. How compassionate. He's all heart, isn't he? And he wants his constituents to pay the price for that, by the way. And he ends up by saying how much he's agreeing with his audience and how he wants them all to go elsewhere in the country, preferably London. So if you live in London, he wants more in your area.
The first is, as I've said, I am not in any way seeking to defend the record that has seen people using hotels anywhere, Skegness or anywhere else. There are parts of London that have got 8,000 asylum seekers. Those big cities, if you'll let me finish, I'm actually agreeing with you. Those big cities.
So he's saying he's actually agreeing with them. I don't see any agreement at all in that room. I think he is baffling and deluding them. What he's saying, I think you can summarise it as him saying, there's a legal duty, there's nothing we can do about that, we have to take these people in, like it or not, there's no choice. And these poor people are fleeing for their lives. It's a shame, it's terrible, we have to do something. Humanity requires we have to do everything for them. And the only thing is we need to process them faster, make them citizens faster. And perhaps in the meantime, other areas, the big cities, places like London, should be taking more. That's the point he's making. His method seems to be to present what I think are half-truths at best as facts, and swiftly, without giving any supporting evidence, or very little supporting evidence, and giving anyone the chance to dispute them, just moving swiftly on. So by the time the average person has been able to absorb the information, then he's just moved on to another point, and that helps to establish half-truths as facts without having to argue the point. And I think that's what he's doing here. Finally, just to sum it up, you can watch him when he's faced with the first question. It's a lady saying, we don't know who these people are, they need to be controlled, the numbers need to be controlled, and the people there need to be controlled and patrolled to make sure they don't commit crimes. And see his response. I'll just play it now.
That there is a real need to make sure that there are not people with the kind of criminal records that you described. So, and you are absolutely making the right. We all want to control it, but what we do have to do is both control it in the long term and the medium term. Of course, we have to do that, but we also have to deal with the problem that we've got here.
Give me your own opinion as to whether he answered that lady's question directly, how much of an attempt he made to deal with it at all. Now, why is he so confident about in his methods? Why is he so confident about doing this? Well, I think there are two things. Firstly, I want to look at his majority in Skegness. So this is the Wikipedia page, and you see he got elected. Hold on, let me just go down a bit. He got elected in 2015. Now you can see there that his majority his percentage of the vote was 43.8. UKIP then came a good second place with 33.8. So that they were hot on his heels. But then in 2017 he had 63.6, and UKIP then by that time it's only 7.7. So then by 2019 he was up to 76.7. So what appears to have happened is largely the UKIP, that 33%, have gone to the Tories, gone to him. So his UKIP's vote has gone down, his has gone up by roughly the same amount. He has a thumping great majority there. The people of Skegness are voting for him. It's a very safe seat for him. When you're in a safe seat, you don't really have to do very much. You just keep the local constituency party happy so you don't get deselected, and you make a speech like this one in support of the government, and you're riding high on the hog. And the second reason is that the political class in general know that as long as they're keeping us in the room, complaining, barracking and heckling, they've got us there. We are not we are still going along with the system. So as long as we're in the cattle crush, allowing ourselves to get castrated, then we will be docile. It's when we go out of the cattle crush, go out of the cattle pen, then we might get out of hand and come back and run them down somehow, or just really hold them to account. And as long as we are in the room, then then everything is okay. Now what I want to do is I want to show you the if I show you, hold on. Now that's the 2.5 hour video, and it just shows people in the room. Let me try and find the right place. Now what you can see at the beginning is that room is full. It's pretty packed. There's standing room at the back, or people are standing at the back. So that is a full room. Let me just go along to about the midpoint, an hour.
You stop and you listen to our voices. You are our MPs, and if we're not happy with something, we bring that to you, and we expect you to work for us, and we expect you to sort it out. Also, there is a...
So that is still a pretty full house. People are staying in the room after about an hour. And after a couple of hours, 2 hours, a bit over 2 hours, it empties out a bit.
This country, but if there are exactly 4 banks pending that position, no one should feel like that.
I don't think that's particularly significant. Some of the people may have said to themselves, I'm fed up with this, I've heard enough, I don't like this man, I'm just giving up on this whole system. I don't think that's what's happening. I think people are thinking, I've been here for 2 hours, that's long enough, I've got to go and have dinner. He has basically outlasted them. That's what I think has happened there. I think this man at the next election will get voted in with the same thumping majority. So the question is, why are all political authorities right across the Western world, the entire political class across the Western world, so keen to encourage such huge levels of mass immigration? Why are they always promising they're going to reduce it and always ensuring that the next year has a record level of immigration? Why are they permanently running the immigration system at full blast or faster, as I think they're doing today? So it's almost breaking down. Why is that? If that was simple stupidity or ignorance or incompetence, incompetence tends to vary, it tends to be random and randomly distributed. You would expect mistakes to go the other way as well. They don't. They're always in the same direction. That can only be explained by some form of intention. It's some kind of motivated action, something people are doing because they want to do. And I think you are seeing that in the slippery and manipulative way of talking, of speech that this man has given. I think this is a slippery, manipulative speech, and I think that is further evidence. He's called all these constituents, being loud and clear, we don't want these people in this country. You are one of our lawmakers. This is what you should be trying to prevent. Why aren't you? And he's just coming back to them saying, tough, put up with it. I might see it. I might ask people to get them transferred elsewhere, temporarily. And by the way, I'm such a nice guy, I couldn't turn some of these terrible unfortunates away. But that only works when you have a compliant, supine population. And I'm afraid that the evidence from Skegness is that the population there, as with the rest of us, is compliant. And so these methods, what I would call a conspiracy without thinking, that people in power doing what serves them, that is in place. So it's rare that you get the opportunity to see so much grease packed into so few minutes, such a short space of time. So I hope that this has been an interesting illustration of what I'm talking about. What I want to, in the next video, I want to go into a bit more detail about what people are saying about whether it's a conspiracy and give you my views, but I'll do that next time.